So let's continue. Let's continue to SQL injection, please. So what is SQL injection? SQL injection occurs when an attacker is able to insert a series of SQL statements into query that an application will execute on its database. So this is a very simple, super simple example. We have username and password, and then after we put the username and password, there is an SQL command, select everything from users, where user equals something and password equals something. As long as it's the correct answer, we are authenticated to the system. But what if instead of username, just the username, I'll close the SQL statement here with a tick and then write the condition that will always be true, or 1 equal 1, and then put a comment to the rest of the SQL command. So in that way, if it's authentication module, I'll be authenticated to the system. If it's a module that provide my profile, I will see the profile details of all the users in the system. So let's see an example. We have in here Node.js application API, and we have a method, a search method, that using this method we can search product, a certain product in the system, a product that his name is like something that we provide criteria. So let's run the API. So in the real world, there will be a client, a JavaScript client, Angular, or a Windows client, or some sort of client, another client that connect this API. But I prefer to use Burp Suite. Burp Suite is a tool for penetration testers. So it's much more convenient to check and to test vulnerabilities in a web application using Burp Suite. So I'll go to, okay. So right now I'm asking for the product that its name contains lead. Okay, and then I get in return a product named as lead bulb, etc., etc. This is description and this price. What if I put a tick? If I put a tick, you have an error in your SQL syntax. Check the manual, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so first of all, the first vulnerability that I see here in this API, that this API is very chatty. I don't want that my API will be so chatty, because not just it's me that as a developer, I can debug the errors of the API more quickly. The black hat can also enjoy these details to do some bad things to my API. So the first thing that I would like to do is to cancel these details. Just leave something like an error is occurred, nothing more. So the error, what I have here is select everything from product, where name like, and then because I put the tick, my SQL doesn't know what to do, because if I close the tick, where is the semicolon? What is this percentage is doing here? The MySQL does not understand. So I'll continue my query to build my payload. And now I added a union. Okay, so now I know it selects everything from product, where some sort of criteria, union select something. So I guess it's 4 columns. Maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong. If I'm an attacker, I'll try to add some sort of context until I don't get an error. Okay. And the name of the table, I'm trying to guess the name of the table. And thankfully, because this API is very checky, I can know that the table user does not exist. So at this point, what I can do is to guess a better name, or I can go to the intruder here. You don't have to know it. It's just a little bit more information than you need. And then I can use this intruder to guess names of tables. Okay, so I'll continue because I know it's users. And then I again try this one just to make sure that I have this table and I have this table. And now, again, I can do a brute force to guess optional column names, or I can just think, okay, it's users table. Maybe it has email, username, password. Okay, so let's continue in the attack. And as you can see, I have now all the details in the users table. So first of all, let's fix the issue with the chatty log. I prepared in advance. So here, instead of returning all this information to the users, what I do here is to log all this information and just return an error occurred. Let's try it. Let's go to the place we had an error. Okay. And we can see that an error occurred. But the SQL injection vulnerability is still a problem, because if it's an open source solution and the black hat managed to research the solution and then spot a vulnerable server in the wild, because he knows by heart the code of the solution because it's in GitHub, it can also attack the application. So if after this fix of the log, it's still vulnerable. Okay, so let's fix the vulnerability, the real vulnerability. And we have here, instead of concatenating, what we did before is to concatenate the product name into the query, what we'll do now is to use parameterized query. In Node.js, I just put a query string, and then instead of including here in connection query only the query that contains everything, I put a query with a question mark, and separately I put the variable content. And in that way, if I run the solution again, we'll get nothing. And why? Because right now, the MySQL knows that this thing is not a part of the query, it's merely the content of the product name. So because there is no product name named as lead, tick, union, blah, 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 I get 200, and I get an empty list. So this was SQL injection. Let's continue. So we saw all these things live. Yeah. So let's move now to the next vulnerability, XSS. XSS allows attackers to inject malicious script into web pages viewed by other users, potentially leading to data theft, session hijacking, or other malicious actions. So let's see it works. We can close this visual code. And we'll take, not this product, we'll take this one later. Yeah, we want in a new video, in a new window, sorry. And what we have here is a Flask API, a super simple blog. Let's run it. Okay. And now let's check it out. Okay, and I logged into the system, and then I write a comment. Okay, but what if instead of just text, I put something else? For example, an HTML tag with an event, a JavaScript event. Let's try it. Ooh la la, we get an alert. So again, this alert is like the calculator that we saw before. It's just a proof of concept. If I can pop an alert, I can run other JavaScript commands. This is the reason we pop up alerts. So let's try to pop something else. For example, the session cookie. And see how it goes. So I get the first cookie, and then the second alert, not cookie, the first alert, and now we get the second alert, but it's empty. So I couldn't pop the session cookie, and let's see why. Okay, so the reason we couldn't see the session cookie is because the Flask infrastructure did something really good. They put the session cookie in HTTP only, meaning that I cannot access the session cookie with JavaScript. But if I'll put the HTTP only, if I put false value in the HTTP only, and I'll refresh, I'll see the session cookie, which is very problematic. There are more things that I can see in here, which is the body text. So, of course, if it's an alert, it's not a very big problem because it's only proof of concept. What if, let's see it in action. You can see, I can see the text that we have on this web page right now. So if it's an alert box, it's not a big problem, it's not an issue. But if instead of an alert, I use a fetch command and I'll send the document cookie or the content of the body to a third party, to a malicious website, it's not so good, isn't it? So let's try to open a malicious server. Okay. It's in port 5555. And now what's going on? Okay, we have the alerts from before, but in here we also have the session cookie. okay? And we can also for sure send the body. Okay, you can see here the body as well. Percentage 20 is a space bar encoded, but we have all the content in here. So what we've learned is that we have a cross-site scripting that when the HTTP only is set to true, the attacker will not be able to steal our session cookie. So it's good to leave it in HTTP only, set to true, but we also have to fix the vulnerability. So the first thing is this auto escape false. So the default in Jinja template engine and Flask is to do auto escaping. But sometimes third parties require from us to put the auto escape on false. So sometimes we put it on the template, but we can still do something. We can go to some of the controllers that we want that are risky, and then we can escape them using HTML escape method. Okay, so if I use this escape, I'm fine. Let's check it out. Refresh. We have a fresh API. And if I try my tricks again, I will get nothing. So what happened here? After the encoding, instead of the HTML does not interpret this image source, this image tag as a tag, but it interprets it as text because it's encoded. So if you look at here, you can see, much better see it in Chrome. Okay, so you can see here, it's not a greater than, smaller than, but it's encoded. Because it's encoded, the browser does not interpret this as image tag, but merely text. So this was XSS. Let's continue. Let's talk about DeSerialisation. DeSerialisation is the process of converting data from a serialized format, of often a byte stream or string, or a JSON string, back into an object. So if I want to send an object from one API to another, I can do the process of serializing. Instead of an object, it's a string, a byte stream, okay? And then when the information access the API do the deserialization, which is taking the string or the byte stream back into an object. So in this example, we have a class animal, class cat, and class dog implements animal and also implements and the serializable interface, while the eat method in cat is harmless, but the eat method in dog is risky. And then we have person, and class person contains the interface animal, meaning that we can put in person a cat, a dog, or anything that implements animal, because person contains animal. So when we instantiate a person with a cat, nothing happens. But when we instantiate a person with a dog, there is a risky method in dog. So it's not so good. So this is how it goes. This is a benign process. I instantiate animal with a cat, and then the person contains the animal, which is a cat. I put it on a test.serial file, and then when it gets to its target, it's deserialized and everything is okay. But if unexpectedly, instead of sending a cat, someone send a dog, then we'll have a problem, because dog is risky, and as you can see it here in the code, the eat method in dog pops a calculator, and that's what happens when we send a dog instead of a cat. So you might ask, but how could it happen? So why things like this happens in Java many times in Java? Because sometimes we allow to do deserialization, we are not aware of all the objects that we have in the memory. We think that all the objects that inherits or implements animal are benign, but we don't know, because there are so many objects, we don't know that there are risky objects that implements animal, and that's why we're in problem. So what can we do? What can we do? So in OWASP we trust, I might talk about OWASP a little bit later, but for now, just remember it's a very good source for information about application security. And in the case of Java, the best thing that we can do is to never use read object, but instead of read object, prepare infrastructure method that will do the same but in a safe way. And we should also override the resolve class. There is more information about Java in the Oracle securing guideline, and you can also check this guideline as well. In Python, we have to look for PKIL in the source code, or PyYAML in the source code. And if we sniff, as attackers, if we sniff the data in the API that goes to this API, and we spot a dot, maybe we have a chance to do a deserialization attack. And this is the Oracle guidelines, the security guidelines. It's also a very good source to check out what to do with deserialization. Let's continue to SSTI. SSTI, server-side template injection. This is a vulnerability that allows an attacker to inject malicious code into a server-side template, potentially leading to remote code execution or data exposure. So let's see it in the code. Not this one, but this one. We should stop this process. Yeah. And we can go to this place and run. We have here a super simple Flask API that gets C, a query string param C, and then to put it directly in the render template string. Not a very good idea. And I run. I will go back to my beloved verb suite. there is a cheat chat here. Okay, and the first thing that I'm gonna do is send a test. Okay. As a matter of fact, we can go to see it from the browser as well. Okay, please send me something inside the C. Okay, and I write test. And now it's the same. It's the same thing in here in the browser and also in Burp. So, but what I want to do as an attacker, if I suspect that there is a template-side server injection, a server-side template injection, I'll try to put an expression in here. So here it's benign. It's not, maybe it's not benign, but I check this calculation and I see that I get a response. So it works. So what can I do more? I can check the config, and maybe I'll get some information, some useful information from the config. It's an object that we have in the memory. And now I try to see all the classes that I have in the memory right now, in the Flask API memory, and I see many classes. But I want only one. I want something with process. I just forgot the name, because if I have a class named as process something, I will be able to run OS commands. So I'll put the 0 and I'll get the first class. But how could I guess the class that I want to find? So I send this HTTP request to the intruder. It's just a demonstration. You don't have to remember everything I do here, just to let you know what goes behind when there is a penetration test or, God forbid, a real attack. So in here, this is the 0. It becomes a parameter for the attack. I choose numbers. And what Burp Intruder will do for me is trying to send this request and figure out which class belongs to any index between 0 to 400. Goes really quickly. I go to the filter and I tell the filter that I want something with process. I get only 3 of them. I just remember that this is not what I'm looking for. It's not complete process, but it is subprocess p open. This is the method that I want. Subprocess p open will open and will run an OS command for me. So I know the index is 368, 368, 368. I'll go back to the repeater. I'll write 368. And then, of course, I have the p open. And then I'll run the calculator. Ta-da! So, how do I prevent this issue? Actually, it's super simple. We saw it before. Instead of using this very risky method, we are not going to use it. We're going to use Jinja or some other sort of template mechanism with an HTML file separated from the code. And then we'll have a render template. We'll use the render template. And never, we're not going to use this risky render template string. So this was SSTI. Continue. Now, after we mention all these vulnerabilities, let's talk about how to protect ourselves. There will be more vulnerabilities. Now we have AI, and there will be other technologies, and other stuff happening in our world, because every day we have new technologies and new ideas, a lot of entrepreneurs coming with their stuff, very good stuff. So we have to think about, we have to protect ourselves no matter what technology we're dealing with, no matter what a new programming language we're dealing with. We have to think about the methodology. And that's why my partner and me thought about prevent. So we believe that if we go with prevent, we are more likely to write secure code. So priority. Priority means security is the first priority. So I know you work in a company and sometimes somebody comes to you, a project manager or product manager, and asks from you to finish this and that today because the customer is waiting, etc. No, security is the first priority. You will never put something in production that could be risky. We'll think about the privacy of our customers. We'll not put risky details in logs, for example. We want to protect the information. We want to protect, for example, ID numbers and credit card numbers and more information. Actually, we can know more about privacy if we ask what the business owner scares from. We have to think about permissions. Maybe right now the application is super simple and all the users get the same service, but even if it's that's the case, we have to think that maybe one day it will not be the case and we'll have to give different services to different users. So when we design, we have to keep this in mind. R for reporting and logging. So please remember to think to think about all the risky places in our application. Again, we can talk with the business owner and think what he or she worries about. And for example, if there is a login to the system more than 5 times, if sometimes someone buy a product spending 1,000 shekels in 1 minute, things like that. We'll think about the important events and then we'll log it, and also deal with reporting, because sometimes if it's really extreme event, we want to report, to send an SMS or an email to someone. Errors and exceptions, we have to think about the exceptions. They should never happen just deliberately. We have to think in advance to find the weak spots and to put try and catch, and to put logging and to understand what's really going on. We should never let these exception happens and crash our application. It could also lead to denial of service, because if there is an exception that we didn't deal with, exceptions are very costly, and if they will happen a lot, the application consumes a lot of memory, so it could lead to denial of service as well. We have to think about verify, and when I talk about verify, I mean about when we use a third party, when we use code from ChatGPT, or when we use code from Stack Overflow or from GitHub, we have to make sure that this code or this third party is secure enough. And we also have to verify that our code and our colleagues' code is secure. We have to ask for a code review. We have to agree to provide code review when our colleagues ask from us. Easy to use safely. So the classic example is the file open. So in every platform we have file open method, and it gets as a parameter a value that basically the user doesn't have, could, instead of writing only a file name, it could traverse all over our drive. So if I would come back to be a developer, infrastructure developer, the first thing that I'm going to do is to write a secure file open that is secured from past traversal. The same thing about SQL, about the data layer. Instead of letting juniors or people that they don't know about security to write a data layer that contains queries that concatenate, that user supply data that is concatenated to a query, I want to write infrastructures that are safe, meaning they contain only parameterized query. Neat code. When my code is neat, when my code is neat, it's much more easy to spot security vulnerabilities. And so neat code is good for a lot of because of a lot of aspects, but also for security by clarity. Trust boundaries, and this is the heaviest part of prevent. It means that when we move information or control between entities with different trust level, we have to take proactive actions. If data is moving from the users to the API, from one API to another API, we have to think about privacy. We have to think about, wait a second, is this a text that I get from the user, or this is something else that could come? And if it could be something else, how do I protect myself from a script or from SQL command? And more and more. If you want to find more about Secure from Scratch, please go to securefromscratch.com. We provide workshops, sometimes in conferences, sometimes there are videos, and you're invited to participate, to write infrastructure. We'll put it on our GitHub, and you can share it with developers all around the world, developers that would like to contribute a safe infrastructure. Thank you very much for listening. I wish you good luck in the tournament. I wish you will enjoy from it. Enjoy the run. My name is Orsal. I'm the Secure from Scratch CEO and co-founder. I also find time to research for vulnerabilities. I also conduct penetration tests because I really like it. Please feel free to contact me with questions, with ideas, and I hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.